Did you? That was a blast.
Absolutely, that's where I met him.
By now and
Yeah.
The full setup on car adjustment.
Mike, what's going on, man?
Hey, how are you?
Good, man. Good. So to the viewers out there, you get to see the intro twice. It is our new for 2024 intro. We had some technical difficulties. It was only streaming to Instagram, and that's it. So we had to go back in and restart everything. So welcome to 2024, first podcast of the year. And tonight, we have the one and only Mike Hamrick from Willwood Disc Brakes. How you doing, Mike?
Well, I don't know about the one and only.
So, Mike, you had a pretty awesome end to 23.
I did, and it's something that has been planned for a while, but we found the right time to do it. I got married on December 17th.
And congratulations, brother.
You know, we've been engaged for a while, but ended up narrowing it down to literally one day. And it's because my son Chase was going to be home on the 16th. So the only thing that I've told my new bride is I don't care how we get married, what we do. The only thing I want is my son home from the Army when we get married.
And that's perfect, man.
Yeah, I said that's the only thing I want. I don't care about it. You don't even have to get me a ring. I don't even need a ring. So he came home on a Saturday, and Sunday we got married. So super happy about it.
That's awesome, brother. Congrats, man. Again.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, man. So you've been at Willwood for quite a while. What got you started into motorsports and into this arena, specifically with the brakes and the industry and whatnot?
I grew up as a fourth generation bodyman. Yeah. So my family has been in the body shop business since like the 40s. So I worked at my family.
You're talking back in the old days of using lead to fill the panels and whatnot.
Oh yeah, no, my grandfather was an OG. He was in World War II. As soon as he got out of World War II, my great grandfather had already been working at a body shop. So he got out of the Army. He was a Ranger, 5th Battalion, so pretty badass.
That's awesome.
Got out and started working at the body shop in our hometown of Rock Island, Illinois. And really, the rest of it's history. Moved from Rock Island in 1953 to Southern California. Started a shop that's still there. We sold the shop in 73. It's still called Hamrick's Auto Body.
No kidding.
It's in Canoga Park, California. But then my real father and my uncle were the third generation, and I became the fourth generation.
That's a long storied history, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. So right out of high school and before high school, I worked at the body shop in the summertime and anytime really I could, but was going to school, working at the body shop. And after 2 years of college, I realized I could probably make a lot more. I feel like I can make a lot more money doing this stuff. And a lot of it was mischievous as well.
Yeah.
It's typical body shop, thinking. And
yeah,
I think it really helped me with a lot of my street smarts.
Oh yeah.
So what ended up happening is, when I was like 26, I got an opportunity to run the shock division for a company called Sway Away.
Okay. Yep.
I don't know if many of you have heard of that company. It's more off-road based and a lot of Volkswagen components based, but I would say between the late 70s through the 80s and through the 90s, if you off-road raced and it had a swing axle in it, so a Volkswagen based off-road car,
It's like a torsion axle.
you pretty much had everything. Yep. So we made axles, torsion bars, leaf springs, in like pretty badass stuff.
That's
like
awesome.
Badass. And then that company purchased a company called Custer, Kustr shocks. And when they did that, I found an opportunity to kind of get into the aftermarket business, if you want to call it that. So I worked over at Soyaway for about 7.5 years. And right after 9/11, I got laid off. Business got really, really slow.
Yeah.
I got laid off and couldn't find my way for about 6 months. And I put in a God, what do you even call it? A resume.
This shows how long you've been there.
Yeah, I haven't put together a resume in a long time. So I sent a resume into Willwood, and I actually did a SEMA project car in 2001. 2001? Yeah, the year 2000 on my Honda Civic. That was a company car, and it used the second Honda Willwood brake kit ever made.
Wow.
So it was like a long time ago. And let me tell you, even in that Honda market, there's probably not a lot of you guys watching right now that are into Hondas, but I'm actually a Honda guy. Like that's my preferred vehicle base. I drive an Acura TL Type S every day. That's my daily. It's been my daily for 12 years. Anyway, I did some stuff with Willwood, and I said, you know what? They need a marketing manager. I don't know if I can really be a marketing manager, but I want to get my foot in at a place like that because they're pretty cool. Well, 6 months later, they called me one afternoon. I was working for Hostess, of all things.
Yeah.
I got my daughter down here, and I got my son, Chase, in my arm. And I get a phone call at like 5 o'clock. I say, yeah, you sent in a resume, and Steve, our sales and marketing director. I go, oh, yeah, Steve Cornelius. Oh, yeah, Steve. I go, I don't really know him, but I know who he is. He gave me some free parts. Yeah. It was a SEMA car. It's second Honda brake kit ever. Yeah. So I said, yeah, I'd be really interested. It's a sales position, right? And they go, yeah, we need somebody to fill a sales position of someone who's moved on and is starting his own business. And I said, you know what? I'm totally down for it. When can I come in? Well, when can you come in? I said, I can come in tomorrow. Said, okay. So this is the head of HR. Her name was Julie. And I said, you just tell me when you want me to come in. Well, it sounds like you have a job though. And I go, I don't want this job. This is just a job. Listen. I just need to make some money, and
free Twinkies aren't enough to keep you there.
No, dude, I was cleaning up that place. I would leave in the morning with a whole truck full of cake, and I'd come back with none. And it made all the old men mad because they're like, where's your cake that you returned? And I'm like, I sold it. And they're like, yeah, but you need to bring it back. So it goes to the little, you know how you go to the Hostess thing and it's got all the cake that's on the shelf.
Yeah.
I go, no, dude, I sold all that cake because if I come back with no cake in the truck, I make more money.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Mike, you got to bring that cake back. I go, no, I don't. So long story short is I never had an interview at Willwood.
It was just come on in.
No, I got on the phone. Well, I didn't even get on the phone. I basically said, I'll be there tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
Yeah. So
I showed up at 1 o'clock, and if you've ever been to Willwood, which sometime you'll have to come.
Yeah.
It's almost like the daughter coming down the staircase for prom.
Yeah.
We have a big staircase, and if you're standing at the base of the staircase, you almost feel like the date that's waiting for her to come down, right? So here comes Steve walking down, and he comes down and he says, well, like you to fill this position for this market, which was hot rod and muscle car stuff back when we barely did any of it. I'd like you to fill that position. You can start in 2 weeks and you'd make this much money. And I said, great, I'll take the job. And he looked at me and he goes, well, come in. You want to come upstairs and meet the rest of the guys? That was my interview.
Perfect, man. That's awesome. So it's funny you bring up the Honda stuff. Jinx Jordan, longtime SCCA guy. We're talking a little bit about him before we came on. He just popped on the on here saying that he's here watching the SITREP tonight too. He's a longtime Honda guy running. You're in a CRX for years and multiple national championships with that car.
Yep.
He's working on a third gen right now. About to get that thing finished and on track. So
awesome.
Moved and he's trying to reclaim his mullet from the 80s and pick that up. I say that Jinx is going to be up here in Tennessee in about 3 weeks teaching a course on base at Fort Campbell. So always good to hang out with him and talk racing with him. That guy's been racing for years. So shout out to Jinx.
Awesome. So go ahead.
Moving on from Hostess, running right into sales. And that would have been what, about 22 years ago at this point?
It was in May, it'll be 22 years. Yep.
Dang, that's insane. That's awesome.
Right.
That's awesome. So how is now at this point, you are basically doing a little bit of everything, whether it's hot rods and muscle cars, pro touring stuff, off-road stuff. I mean, you've got your hand in everything.
You know, the one thing about Willwood is if you say that you're just going to take care of a market, it really can't happen. No matter what, you're going to get kind of fed into some different types of motorsport and not even racing. I mean, it could be Harley Davidsons. We did Harley brakes for a long time, and it was huge for us. But I learned enough about Harley Davidsons that I could probably go to Sturgis and know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know, one of the events that I really want to go to, I just knew I couldn't do it this year, is the Chili Bowl.
Yeah.
I've been watching a lot of sprint car, dirt racing, dirt late model stuff. And honestly, it's because I feel like I've done so many different things at Willwood that I want to learn more about that.
Yeah.
You know, and not even so much about like how to do it, but like the marketing and what parts we're using and who the shoes are.
Yeah.
You know, we do a lot of stuff with Keith Coons Motorsports, and he's got all the fast people at the Chili Bowl this week. And I think he's got the most wins as a team owner. Like, he's got a lot of wins at the Chili Bowl. That intrigues me because I want to learn more about it.
Yeah. No, it's interesting to see, you know, I knew about Willwood as a kid. You know, OE brakes on our snowmobiles were all Willwood brakes.
Yeah.
And so I learned about it that way. And, you know, my dad had always told me these are awesome brakes, and they worked really well. I mean, the snowmobile would stop on a dime as long as you weren't on ice, you know. But what I find interesting is as I've, you know, gotten older and, you know, I've been in the Army the better part of 20 years at this point. There's a lot more than just, you know, power sports and motorsports that you guys are dealing with. Are the last generation of Humvee that is now getting, you know, is getting turned in and getting basically decommissioned at this point. They were running Willwood 4 pistons all the way around on that. And it's funny how I realized that. I was crawling under the truck one day because we were getting ready to do some modernization efforts to it, try to improve the brakes, give it a little more power, do some things like that with it. And I crawl under it to take a look because I remember the older ones were all using the big GM truck caliper. And get up underneath there, and I'm like, that's a 4-piston brake. And then I got looking a little bit closer. I'm like, that's familiar. That's a Willwood brake. And you know, same thing with some of our civilian vehicles that we, you know, that the military uses. You know, the Toyota Land Cruisers, the Hiluxes, and everything. They've all moved to Willwood brakes at this point. So, I mean, you guys are putting the skids on a lot more than just, you know, race cars now.
Have you ever been to Disneyland?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the Epcot racers are our calipers and pads.
No kidding.
Yeah, so those Epcot racers are using Willwood stuff. If you're out here in California and you go to the Radiator Springs, what's that ride?
For the Cars ride.
Yeah, the Cars ride. Those
Yeah.
are Willwood disc brakes. If you're driving around and you see those big windmills,
Yeah.
it's got one steel 4-piston Dynalite caliper in each one of those.
No kidding.
Yeah, crazy, right?
That is crazy.
I mean, it's the kind of stuff that I even come across it at Willwood. I am not on the OE side whatsoever.
Yeah.
I'm on the proprietary side. So anything that says Willwood on it,
Yeah.
that's what I do. But I'll go to assembly. Gosh, I was there on Friday with which is kind of cool. An MMA fighter who's getting into cars.
Yeah.
And I'm walking him through where assembly is, and I look over and I see this new caliper, and I was totally intrigued. I'm like, what are we making this for? Well, I went to work today and I found out what it was for, and I'm like, it's for a paper mill.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's air actuated for a paper mill. So it keeps all of their belts that are moving the paper at a continuous speed for the rate that they need to feed them. It's crazy.
That's awesome. That's
so awesome. A lot of people don't know that about Willwood, is that we're in so many different, not even motorsports, just so many different places. You brought up Battelle. We've been doing stuff with them for a while now. You know, armored vehicles right now across the globe, armored vehicles, you know this.
Mm-hmm.
You're on a waiting list to buy an armored vehicle.
Yeah.
And we're on a lot of those.
They need a lot of brakes.
Yeah, we're on a lot of those.
That's crazy. That's awesome. That's, it definitely shows diversification.
Yeah. And the thing that's cool about it is we may learn something from there and use it for a sprint car application. You know, there's been too many times where, great example, we used to have this rotor and it was only used for Talladega and Daytona for super speedways. That's all it was used for.
Mm-hmm.
3/8, 13-inch diameter rotor floating. And it's because at those two places, the only time you need to use brakes is when you come into the pits.
So yeah, you don't need much. I mean, they're wide open
No.
over the entire track. Yeah.
So put these lightweight brakes on, right?
Yeah.
Well, at one point, we won't get into that story, but it got outlawed. So they got outlawed. Somebody from NASCAR looked and went, whoa, wait a minute, that's not enough brake for these cars. And everybody went, yeah, it's more than enough brake. But then when one of the teams convolutes it, which is scalloping the rotor,
Yeah.
and they looked inside the wheel and went, wait a minute, what's going on here? It literally got banned from that race on. And I think it was a Daytona 500. They said after this race, no one can run that rotor again.
That's incredible.
So check this out. I go downstairs one day, and this is like within the first 4 years I'm working at Willwood, and I'm downstairs and I look in the corner and there's a stack of 3/8 thick rotors. And when I say a stack, I mean, it was like 3 feet tall.
Yeah.
At 3/8 thick, right? And it's just nasty and dirt on it. And I went, what the hell? So I grabbed one and I cleaned it off and I looked at the part number and I went upstairs and I saw that we had like 300 in stock, but we haven't sold any.
Yeah.
So I went to my boss, Steve, and I said, what was this for? And he explained to me what it was. And I went, you know what? I'm going to use that for drifting.
Yeah.
And he was like, what do you mean? I go, it's just like drag racing, but I need a bigger rotor to fill that 17 or 18-inch wheel because they want the aesthetic.
Yeah.
We can run a little drag race rotor. That's all the brake they need. But they want something that fills the rotor up or the wheel up, and it's going to be helpful for torque. So you know what? I'm going to start using that rotor. Do you know how many places we use that rotor now?
Oh God, I imagine it's probably dang near everywhere.
Have you ever heard of who Kyle LeDuc is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Kyle Duke and I were very tight, and his 7 championships in his Pro 4 truck were all on 4 of those rotors.
No kidding.
That's what we run on that truck because it's sequential in that truck. So you're not using a bunch of brake. It's like when he built the first truck that went to Pro 4 that was sequential, now you're using the transmission to slow the truck down instead of using the brakes.
Yeah.
So with an automatic in that big heavy truck, you had to have a lot of mass. So we ran like a 14-inch, 1.25-inch rotor, kind of like what we run on the front of a pro touring car, right?
Yep.
Well, when he went to sequential, that chassis, we also took about 1,500 pounds out of the truck.
Holy cow.
So you're still at 900 to 1,000 horsepower, but you take all of this weight out of it. Each corner of the brakes on those trucks, and they still are running the same exact brakes. 16 pounds, the entire brake system.
That's insane.
Right?
That's insane. That's nothing.
So a lot of times what we're trying to do, and it's really kind of bled over to what more of the pro touring stuff. We take some ideas of what we're doing for road race cars. Of course we do.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll sometimes take into account, I'll say, well, you're building this car and it's going to do a lot of different things.
Yep.
Are you ever going to put a 15-inch wheel on it? Well, yeah, I really was thinking about putting a 15. There's a local drag strip I grew up at. I want to put a 15-inch wheel on it and go drive it on the drag strip.
Mm-hmm.
I go, well, then let's put a 12-inch brake, but a good like directional vane 12-inch brake. That way you can put your 15-inch wheel on it.
Yeah.
Well, I can't do that. That's not enough brake. And I go, there's a guy named Mike Meyer.
If you know Mustangs,
he runs an 11 3/4-inch 810 vented rotor on Old Blue. And if anybody on here knows what Old Blue is,
oh, that car is wicked.
I've driven that car. It really kind of blows you away because especially turn in, you can just barely turn that wheel and it's automatically going this direction.
Yeah.
And with very little effort. And everybody goes, wait a minute, he only runs a 4-piston Dynalite? Well, now it's a 6-piston, it's a little bit bigger caliper, but basically a Dynapro 6 on an 11 3/4-inch rotor. And I go, that's all he runs.
Yeah.
It's because we figured everything out so that it's working properly for what he's doing with the car. And that's a big thing.
So that's actually, it's perfect you bring that up. So you see a lot of people out there, they'll throw in like some massive 14-inch rotor and, 6-piston combo on their car. Or, a lot of the OEMs now are running big 14-inch rotors on the Camaros and the Mustangs and everything else. What is it that people need to know when they're getting their cars set up to race, whether it's autocross or road racing? What do they need to be thinking about when it comes to brakes? What are some things that you need to think about when packaging your car to better operate, to get down on the skids?
Well, there's a lot of questions that need to be asked.
Yep.
And let's think about it this way, especially with your business, what you're doing now, right? Yeah. It's something that my wife, my new wife, who is a car girl, like I'm telling you, she drives a 21 Trail Boss with a 6.2 10-speed every single day.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got all kinds of suspension on it, and it's bad. I feel I'm not like a super big truck guy, but like it's a badass truck. And then people are like, "Oh, Mike, your truck is awesome," and I'm like, "That's not my truck. I drive a TL, man. I'm a Honda guy. You're a Honda guy. What are you talking? Oh man, your truck is badass. Look at that Icon suspension, dynamic suspension on it." I'm like, no. We got all that stuff for her. That's her truck.
Yeah.
And they go, well, guess where she likes to shop? She likes to shop at a boutique. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Yeah.
Have you ever gone with a woman to a boutique? What happens is you walk in and you kind of feel like, oh man, this is oh crap. I'm going to be spending a lot of money. And sometimes you don't, because what ends up happening is you go in there and you sit down and, one of the sales ladies says, oh, would you like a soda or a coffee or anything? Yeah, I'll have a coffee. And you sit there and this other salesperson goes over and looks at her size and, oh, where do you like to go? Oh, I love going to the beach. Oh, well, then let's look over here.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, your skin color and your hair color, this will go over. Well, that's exactly what Willwood does.
Yeah.
We have to ask you all these questions to make sure that we're getting you into the correct brakes for what you're going to do.
Yeah.
Now, listen, if you're just going to build a 32 Ford and it's going to be a cool street car that you're going to drive on the weekends or take to a good guys event, you can just kind of pick the regular questions like, do you want a red, black, or polished caliper? Or you want polished? Do you want a drilled rotor or a plain rotor? Well, it's going to be more of a traditional looking car. So don't put a drilled rotor on it. It'll look kind of dumb. Put a plain rotor on it. Oh, man, this is easy. But when it comes down to someone who's building a muscle car to go out and drive it, you really need to start asking them like, what suspension are you going to run? What tire are you going to use? Right?
Yeah.
We know that tire is basically the most important thing. Here's a question that I always ask people. I say, what stops a car? And they always say brakes.
It's a tire.
It's the tire. Well, you're an engineer. You know the difference. But they, oh man, the brakes. And I go, it has nothing to do with the brakes. It has to do with the tire. So when you buy a C7 Corvette and it comes right off the showroom floor, it's got huge brakes. Yeah. And the brakes are really good. Yeah. But it's like a 360 tread wear tire.
Which, when you think about it, it's a good tire, but it's nothing like what you're getting when you throw a set of Yokohamas on it. Or
it's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
You bought this car. So the guy walks up and he's at SEMA, and this has happened numerous times for me because I've been at SEMA so many years and so many events. Oh man, I got this new C7 Corvette and I need better brakes. So, oh, you do? And I mean, like, it's one example of this one guy. He was like this big. I'm little old Mike, Yeah. So, oh, you do? You do? And he's got a beer in one hand, another one in his other hand, a beautiful lady with him in high heels, Affliction t-shirt. And I'm like, oh, you need really good brakes. Yeah. So what's the tire on your car? So what? I go, well, it stops the car. Well, the brakes do. And I go, no, the brakes don't stop the car. It's the tire. Yeah. Now, have you ever gone to the track or have you ever autocrossed? No. I bought this car so I can do that. And I go, now it already tells me what your level of driving is, right? So in a very short amount of time, I've already figured out what size, what color your eyes are, where you like to go and hang out. Yeah. Do you like wearing high heels or pumps? Like, I already know. I already got it all. Yeah. So this one particular customer, I said, hey, it's actually the tire, and your base model it's not a base model. And I go, it's still a base model Corvette. It's got like a 360 tread wear all season tire. Yeah. Okay? If you're going to do this and at your level, I'd really like to walk you over to my friends at Falcon or Toyo or BFG and learn more about tires before you start spending $7,000 on brakes. Yeah. So, but, and I go, you're going to thank me.
Well, and we get questions like that sometimes where it's like somebody brand new into autocross. And like, I just got this car. I want to start autocrossing. What do I do? Get behind the wheel and go take it to an event and drive it. That's what you do. call me in a year after you've had a season of driving, and then we'll talk about modifying this thing to add brakes, add suspension. And the other thing too is like people always want to go to the big guns first. Let's throw more cam in it, a supercharger or whatever. No, get behind the wheel first. So I want to field a question real quick. Paul Brimmeyer said he's got a tech question. So Paul, go ahead and type up and show us what you got. And Michael be happy to answer that. But I think the big thing is that, you know, especially in this, here we go. He had it ready. All right. Can you see that, Mike?
Yep, I can see it. Okay, so with a question like this, you know, there's going to be questions on here that you probably don't want me to ask you. So what 4-piston brakes are they? Are they super lights or are they Dyna lights? And then what the piston sizes are and what the car is.
I can tell you it's a 68 Camaro. And if I got that a year off, I apologize, Paul.
And then is it 11-inch brakes or 12-inch brakes? And what size wheel and tire? And what tire? And then what do you expect to get out of the brakes, right? And here's the thing that no one wants to hear. If anybody knows Willwood, we don't do any power brakes. Oh, so 275, 35, 18-inch wheel. And then is it the 11-inch brakes or 12-inch brakes all the way around?
You know, we talked about this at PRI on the power versus manual brake setup. And my biggest holdback now is I haven't gone to a full floater rear yet on my personal car, which is why I haven't. There we go. Dynalights, 12s.
Okay. And then I think Josh, you're going to be able to answer this, but what does he do with the car?
He does a lot of autocross and cruising with it. Autocross is 1 or 2 events a year, mainly cruising. Beautiful, beautiful, very well done car. He actually showcased it on the SITREP about 9 months ago or so. So he does autocross it. He runs it at UMI Motorsports Park when they run events up there, but he generally cruising. So
12-inch brakes, if you're just doing autocross periodically and then you're street driving it, the 12-inch brakes are really enough. Some of the fastest CP cars in the United States run a 15-inch wheel. Now, a huge tire, though.
Yeah.
Huge, sticky tire. So Frank Stagnero's Mustang, we run a 12-inch front brake and an 11 3/4-inch rear brake, but it's a huge Grand National caliper up front and a super light out back.
Okay.
But the rotors are lightweight, and it's because with that type of autocrossing, you're only on the brakes for up to a minute, and then you go into the pit, right?
Yeah.
So we don't want to have all that rotational and unsprung weight. We want to keep it to a minimum. Now, here's the thing with if you had those 12-inch brakes and you said you're going to go and do a track day, you would be very upset with Willwood because it would be terrible.
I figure you'd end up getting a lot of heat, warping rotors rather
within
quickly.
a lap, depending on the track. But even if it's a mild braking track, within a lapper, maybe 2, depending on your skill set, you're going to get a tremendous amount of brake fade. And it's because you don't have enough radiator. That rotor is not enough mass to cool the system down lap after lap after lap. That really becomes the problem. So going back to what you're doing with this car, I think the 12-inch brakes are fine. I'd like to know what pad you're running. It needs to be
BP20s is what he says here.
Perfect. BP20 is a great pad. In fact, I really like BP20 because it's very streetable. It's still on the quiet side, but it's got a good coefficient of friction. So it on cold rotor, it's not going to feel like a lot, but once it gets some temperature in the rotors and the brakes, that BP20 really works well. And you're not going to see a lot of fade with what you're doing. Now, the thing that you're not going to like to hear is Willwood doesn't do any power brakes. We do manual brakes because real race cars aren't power brake. They're all manual brake.
Yep.
And it's not just because of that. It's also because we have large distributors that buy a lot of parts from us that sell their own boosters.
Yeah.
So if we started making our own booster, we'd be competing with them. We leave that to them. And that's a whole other story about Willwood. A lot of niche markets, we leave it up to our customers to take care of those niche markets. We're not going to start doing that and going, oh man, you know what? We can sell 10 kits to these people over here that have a F-150 Lightning 04 Lightning.
Yeah.
No, we're going to leave that to one of our customers to do it because he does a really good job, right? But here's the thing about power brakes. You really need to be at around 18 cubic inches at idle. And if you don't have 18 cubic inches, you typically can't get a booster to work properly. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's where we're constantly telling people, listen, you might want to look at that manual brake option. People get scared about manual brakes because they think that it takes so much leg effort, but Josh can back me up on this. It's all math. If you have more leverage, you don't have a problem. The problem is that with power brakes, you have less leverage because you've got a booster. But if you don't have the booster with enough vacuum, it's not doing its job, and then the pedal gets really hard. Or you run such a small booster that it won't fill up the vacuum fast enough, and then your brakes get really hard.
Yeah.
Any kind of performance driving, the last thing you want is inconsistency. You don't want to come off a turn 3 every lap and mash the brake or the throttle and go, wait a minute, it's not pulling off the corner like it did before.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's vapor locking. Maybe you're starving the fuel system because it got hot, right? Same thing with brakes. One thing that I preach is I want the driver, especially like very experienced professional drivers, I want the last thing for them to think about is brakes.
Yeah.
I want them, once we sort out and we have so much brake that they're totally confident that they're not thinking about brake, I want them to come in off the track and go, I need more power.
Yeah.
There's a guy named Ken Thwaites, went through this whole thing with his Evo.
And that dude can drive.
Well,
he's been racing for a lot of years.
And when he started running USCA, you know, there was a lot of marketing reasons why we wanted to have Willwood brakes on his car. And the first thing he said was, I want the biggest, baddest brakes. And I went, well, you really don't need that huge caliper because the car's so light. We could run a super light. And we have kits off the shelf that use a super light. So we can start with that. And then we're going to put all the right stuff, just like a boutique would do, right?
Yeah.
Oh, the earrings are going to be the silver ones, not the gold ones, because it's going to go with your belt. And right. I said, no, we're going to run super lights. He's like, what? And I'm like, that's all you need, because when you're on the road course, you're going 3 laps full out. You're never going to need that huge caliper. That caliper, the Aerolite caliper, is almost double the weight of a super light. So I go, why are we going to keep all that unsprung weight all heavy? The car's light and it's got a lot of horsepower. Let's keep it nimble.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess you're right. Well, the funny thing is, with the 3 seasons that he ran that car, the brakes started off here, but they ended up way over here. And it's because we had to keep evolving for how much faster the car was going.
Yeah.
So first season, on point. I mean, nothing wrong. But then he started adding more horsepower, and guess what kept happening? Breaking engines, right?
Yeah.
Then he added so much horsepower that he was breaking transmissions.
Yep.
So we never really figured out the beginning of the second season, like, hey, what do we got to do for the brakes? Because it kept breaking. So we didn't know where to push. He wasn't pushing it far enough to know that we needed to do more, right?
Yeah.
So the start of the third season, guess what? He goes to the first event and he calls me on Sunday night before he gets in his seat. If anybody follows Ken Thwaites, he always gets the seat on the exit aisle.
Yeah.
So he's got the leg room.
I got the extra leg room.
Yeah. He always posts that. And he's literally calling or texting me saying, hey, we got to talk about the brakes. The brakes it was terrible. Oh my God. I still won the event, but it was terrible.
It was
I'm
terrible.
like, okay. And if anybody knows who JJ Farillo is, JJ calls me Monday and goes, it's not the brakes. I said, JJ, he was freaking out. Well, what you don't know, Mike, is that we had all kind of air ducting under that car going to the brakes, but they decided to put a full belly pan on that car.
Oh God.
And it cut all the air from getting to the brakes.
Yeah, it started getting hot.
So 3 laps in, boiling the brakes. But
Yeah.
see, I didn't know that they had done that to the car. Well, they did that to the car to make it faster.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is now we're not getting any air into the brakes. So now we're saturating the system and it's overheating, right?
Yeah.
So the easiest way that we fixed that was just redeveloping the underbelly of the car so that it would pick up the air and put it on the brakes. And the next event, it was great.
No, it's an interesting solution to a braking problem. It wasn't really a braking problem, but second, third order effects, it starts to show.
It starts causing other issues, right?
So we got another question that came up: pedal ratios.
So I'm gonna give you the Willwood typical response for pedal ratios. If it's a passenger car, and this is another place where Josh knows this as an engineer, there's other places in this world where we typically want to have a little more leverage, and that's going to be like in an off-road application where you've got a heavier vehicle. And then they have bigger calipers, so we need to run bigger masters. So the bigger master doesn't build pressure as well as a smaller master cylinder. So we'll use more leverage so you don't have to push so hard. But we're going to base this off of what you guys, I think, are all looking for, and that is passenger car size vehicles. So let's say from 3,000 to 3,700 pounds, right? Mm-hmm. If it's a manual system, we want to be at least 6-1 and maybe up to 7-1.
Wow, really?
Oh yeah. For a manual system, 6-1 is like the sweet spot. We can really, honestly, like 7-1 is where you can really start to like change master cylinder bore sizes to fit the driver's needs better because you have more leverage. So then we can go with like a little larger bore master cylinder and hop up the pad. So the pad has more coefficient of friction. Coefficient of friction is basically how aggressive the pad is.
Yep.
We can put more aggressive pad in it, and then it keeps that pedal from stroking so far. Mm-hmm. But because we don't have any power brakes, we don't have to worry about vacuum or inconsistency of vacuum. So you always have the same pedal feel. It's always the same. It doesn't change.
Yeah.
Now, with a power system, what you're going to find is it's usually between 2.5 to 3.5. That's what most of the car manufacturers have always done, is like right at 3 is half the leverage because you have the booster. But there's some places where, like in off-road, we're running 10-1.
Dang.
Well, it's because we're using 1-ton calipers that have huge pistons. So we got to feed it with a large bore master that doesn't build pressure as easy.
Well, I was out in Vegas last year for the bin, and the shop we were working out of, they were fielding 2 trophy trucks, the 2-wheel drive trucks, and God, that thing weighed like 8,000 pounds.
Yeah,
it was not a light truck.
No, when they're full of fuel and they've got 2 spares, they're very, very heavy. A lot of those trucks actually are really under braked, and they try to increase the brakes by going with a more aggressive pad.
Okay.
But the problem with like a trophy truck is it's not like a road course car where you're on asphalt and you've got a lot of coefficient of friction either.
Yep.
The problem with like a trophy truck is you might be just balls out for 30 minutes and never use the brake.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you've got this huge rotor that's ice cold. And depending on what the ambient is, here in Southern California, I can't believe it. It's like 40 degrees out right now. It's so
Oh,
weird.
man.
Yeah, it's weird. Like super weird.
You guys are in an ice box right now.
It's weird. So if you've got an ambient of 65 degrees and then you've got this rotor that is directional vane, it's actually going to run probably 5 to 10 degrees cooler.
Yeah.
Because it's a fan. So you've got enough surface area that now it's cooling itself off even more because you're not using the brakes.
Yep.
So then you get on the brakes with this really aggressive pad, and the aggressive compound chews the rotor up because it's not a temperature.
Yeah.
So there's like fine lines on what you need to put together to make stuff work right. Like the one customer that just was asking about BP10 or BP20s. BP20 is just phenomenal because it works cold and it works warm.
Yeah, they're easy on rotors. One of our guys, one of our drivers, Brian Pico, he's got a 68 Camaro and he's running Willwoods all the way around, and he was running BP30 pads, and he pulled the rotors off, and it was the GT72s, and they were slotted at one point in time, but he pulled them off, and he's like, "Do you think I can reuse these?" And I'm like, "I have no idea. Let's take a look at them." And turns out that they had been, those 30s just ate up those rotors, and we had to get him a new set of rotors for the car last year. And he ended up dropping down to a BP20 pad, and it's much, much easier on the rotors.
But he's not going to have the same bite.
Yeah.
So,
when you think about it from like autocrossing and things like that, some events, your brakes never really get hot.
No.
And, you're not getting that temperature into them. And I've noticed in my car, when I'm doing like a bed in or whatever, I'll get on the interstate and then I'll come into the exit to get down on the skids. And from 70 to 40, there's not much there, but then they've gotten a little heat by the time I hit 40 miles an hour. And it's like, oh, now we're going to stop now.
Yeah.
That heat got in there.
Yeah. As soon as that heat comes in, then that coefficient of friction curve line really changes its direction. And that makes a big difference. Here's one thing that I preach, especially to our sales staff.
Mm-hmm.
I tell them, I say, listen, unless you really know the customer and you know how good of a shoe they are, or if you've worked with them long enough, then you can probably go to this pad, right? Yep. But if you don't, even if they are a shoe and you think they are, start here.
Mm-hmm.
And then move them up, because it's really hard to bring somebody from up here and bring them back down.
Yeah.
Especially if they're more of a novice driver.
Mm-hmm.
You put them in a BP40 or a BP30 and they're a novice. Oh, it's like crack cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they just want it. They're like, oh, I got to have it. And I'm like, well,
now.
And it's like, well, it's not really the best thing, So I have a lot of customers that are also just, they're at that level where they're like, I want that BP30. I do this enough that I'm making a living doing this, that no matter what, I'm just going to buy rotors every 6 months. I'm just going to do it. Ordering 30s now.
Oh, man.
The 30 is really, it's funny. It's one of those pads that I have always said has got like pixie dust in it.
Yeah.
Going back to Kent Waste, we had tried so many different materials, and then we came out with a 30. Well, I sent 30s. I said, just Hail Mary it. Put these 30s in. You tell me what you think. And Ken, I know he texted me on Sunday at noon at one of the events, and he goes, this is the best brake pad I've ever used in my whole life.
That's awesome.
But see, the thing that really helped me understand and what made me learn more about it was between sending him those 30s and then also Smitty,
Yeah.
they both ran them. So and they were both at the same event, and
But
they
they're
both
on
didn't
totally different cars too.
totally different cars, right?
Yeah.
So I've been to Smitty's house and his shop enough times that if you walk from the house to the shop, it's all pea gravel.
Mm-hmm.
But then you walk into his office and it's linoleum.
Yep.
So he goes, Mike, the other pad that I used to run, I'm not going to say what that pad is. That's actually still a pad that we sell a ton of.
Yeah.
But that friction in my car, it felt like I was pushing down onto pea gravel. But now the BP30, I feel like the brakes are the same, but it's like me sliding my foot on linoleum.
Interesting.
So much smoother, right?
Yeah.
And when you hear a driver that's experienced and knows what they're talking about,
yeah,
they talk about how the brake pedal feel felt so differently.
Mm-hmm.
And you're talking about a car that's manual brakes and a car that was power brakes.
Yeah.
Totally different animals, right?
Yep.
All-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, 3,400 pounds, 2,850 or 2,900.
Yeah.
And almost double the horsepower. I mean, just crazy, right?
Yeah.
But they both came back and told me the same thing. One is just so much smoother. I can't believe it. Well, what's awesome is, like everything I try to do at Willwood, I take that same information and I share it with the team.
Yep.
I go, hey, this is the feedback I got. And that's the kind of feedback that now they can ask a question to their road course driver that runs a American Muscle, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, with those 30s, how does the pedal feel? Oh my God, I didn't even think about it. It's so much better. Well, is it smoother? Yeah, you're right. It's way smoother.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many depths with brakes that's what always keeps me kind of I want to say it's probably intrigued.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of times where I'll make a choice on something like a master cylinder bore size, and then we end up running it and I go, that was not the right thing.
Yeah.
That was not good. Right?
Mm-hmm. Now it's just interesting to hear you talk about this, because a lot of people, they just, I throw on whatever and hope it works. And, as you kind of start to build your car out and you start to figure out what's working and what's not working, coming to somebody like Willwood can help dial that car in and get it right. And that's one of the things too. Like there's a lot of things that I don't know, and I'm not afraid to admit that I don't know them. And like with Chris Brown's car, his Mustang, we had that conversation, and what do we want to do for this thing? And we're excited to, we're going to be getting that thing set up, and he's running 4 events with Optima this year, and we're going to be getting his car ready to go for that. And it's one of those things where you guys have years of experience doing this, and you can help dial people in. And, we reach out to that resource whenever we have anybody that's looking for something on their car. And that's one of the huge things that I love about the relationship we have, is our ability to, email or give you a call and be like, Mike, we got this car, we got this set up. This is what they're doing. Where do we go with this?
And I think that one of the, not funny things, but one of the things that I first asked is, I said, well, what size wheel are you going to run?
Yep.
And you both said simultaneously, you said 18. And I go, well, you can't run an 18 on the factory brake.
Yep.
And you were like, and I go, I know it sounds crazy, but we learned that in 2017 with Mike Meyer running New Blue. Is he of course purposely got an 18-inch wheel and hadn't even taken him out of the box. And this is a true story. And Mike and I are super tight. I mean, we're very good friends, right? And I said, okay, we're going to send you the brakes. Give me a second. Honey, look at the dog.
Got the pups.
She hears mommy home, so she wants to get in the house.
Nice.
So I said, Mike, guess what? Go try to put that 18-inch wheel on the factory brakes. And he said, he gave me the Mike Meyer over the phone look. I couldn't see his face, but it was this face. I said, just go try to do it.
Yeah.
So the next morning he calls me, he goes, yeah, 18 won't fit. And I go, I know. That's why the brakes I sent you are smaller. But everything that's built into the brake that we're sending him and what we're going to be using on that Mustang, so much more efficient.
Yep.
And about the same weight, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But we've taken a bunch of weight out of that one-piece rotor.
Yeah.
And it's floating. So it's going to be tremendously, so much more efficient that he's probably not going to feel a big difference until he takes it out and gets the system saturated. And then he's going to go, holy cow. Like I can just nail this brake pedal over and over, lap after lap, and have no fade. And that's really the efficiency that we're trying to build into a system. A lot of people think that we're just trying to build brakes to stop the car 50 feet shorter. And you know what I tell them? Get a stickier tire.
Yeah.
Well, I'm on a 200 tread wear. Well, then go run a slick.
Yeah. Throw on some cruisers.
It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. It's not about how much shorter. It's about the repeatability. How many times can you hit that brake pedal and never have any fade? So much more important than trying to make your car stop any number of feet shorter.
Yeah.
That's a misconception that a lot of people have, and that's what we try to steer them away from.
Mm-hmm. No, and it makes sense, and especially if you're tracking the car, you know, you're running road course stuff, you're going to get a lot of heat built up, and you've got to be able to dissipate the heat. You've got to be able to manage that load over time, because there's no worse feeling than going into a corner with no brakes.
Yeah. So here's something that's kind of leads into that. You know, I'm not as savvy about a lot of the East Coast. You know, I haven't even been to UMI, and UMI is becoming one of those places, just like the Chili Bowl, that I want to go to UMI.
Yeah.
You know, everybody's like, Mike, you got to go to UMI. You got to come out to UMI. And I'm like, it's always on the same weekend as another event that I do.
Yep.
But with my West Coast guys like Brian Hobaugh, Mike Meyer, Scott Frazier, a lot of the Andy McKee.
Yep.
You know, for a long time, those NorCal boys, they had two places to run. It was called Marina.
Mm-hmm.
And then also Crow's Landing. And you talk about surfaces that are night and day.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. It's like a big autocross at Columbus.
Yep.
Versus, God, I don't even know what is as grippy, because I've driven it so many times. I can't tell you how grippy Crow's Landing is, because it's concrete that's been graded.
Oh yeah, that sounds. We did an event on the airfield at Fort Campbell here last year and the year before, and yeah, you've got all the grip in the world. It's
so you have to set the car up differently. You have to. You set the car up so differently, and when you get the experience of guys like Hobaugh, Meyer, I'm not sure how many people watching know who Andy McKee is. But when you're talking about Andy McKee, who's basically in a Formula One car, that's an autocross car. It's XP.
Yeah.
Holy moly. Little tiny changes make the biggest difference. In fact, I don't even think he's ever run his race car, the XP car at Marina, because it would fail. It'd be terrible. It would be terrible.
Yeah.
But when you see a car like that at Crow's Landing with all that grip, and he just keeps asking for more, give me more, give me more. But see, here's the other cool thing about it is, you know, that he can take it.
Yeah.
You know, it's something about like, as I started learning more about some of the fast guys, and we're going back like what, 12, 13 years ago. It blew me away when I found out that Danny Pop ran the same square area calipers front and rear on his blue late model Rocket.
Mm-hmm.
I said, wait a minute. He's running square. He's running the same brake package on the front as he is on the rear.
Yeah.
So that means that car's 50-50.
Mm-hmm.
I dare a lot of people to drive a car on asphalt
Mm-hmm.
where the engine's not in the middle of the car
Yeah.
and run 50-50 brakes.
Yeah. I feel that would be I don't know. I feel like that the rear would want to, you tend to want to lock the rear end up on that thing all the time.
So and I would love it if Danny was listening right now, but if you're an alien like Danny,
Yeah.
or if you're an alien like Mike Meyer,
yeah.
you can do it.
Yeah.
And loose is fast and out of control, right? But when those guys have the kind of talent that they have, they can run a lot of rear brake.
Well, you watch their in-car video and you watch their handwork on that on a car. You're not even looking at the feet, just the hands.
Yeah.
Like, they are up on the wheel every second of that lap, and it's there's a reason why they're fast.
So those are questions that I'm typically asking customers. Somebody who might be watching, but somebody like Chris Smith, Smitty.
Yeah.
That blue car, that Smurfmobile has gone through a lot of different changes.
Yeah.
And really, I would say like the last year and a half, like last season and a half, it's kind of stayed consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned is that he's driving it faster because he's dialed it in. Right?
Yeah.
Which is what we want to do. Any kind of a race car. It's not really a race car, but he's driving it like a race car.
Oh yeah.
Right? Well, we started into last season, and he's like, man, when I'm at where the Corvette track is,
NCM.
NCM.
Yeah.
He goes, turn one, man, I need more brake. And I think I could use a lot more rear brake. Well, I thought we had a lot of rear brake in that car.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm having that conversation, we have a gentleman, his name is Dave Brzezowski, and he runs our race division.
Yeah.
So anything racing. And his forte is circle track, asphalt, dirt.
Mm-hmm.
And then he runs all of our TA2 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
His background comes from being a crew chief and manager of people like Players Forsyth. If you don't know what Players Forsyth is, like, it's kind of a big deal. Like, he's been a crew chief for Takuma Sato at the Indianapolis 500. He's a big deal.
Yeah.
So I got off the phone with Smitty and I said, hey, let me talk with Dave. He knows who Dave is. And I said, let me talk with Dave. And I started telling Dave about, what Smitty was saying and what brakes are on the car. And guess what he told me? He said, just put that big 14-inch, 1.25-inch rotor on the back.
Wow.
Don't change the caliper.
Just bigger rotor.
Just put that bigger rotor on it. Go from the 1306 rotor to this bigger rotor. I'm like, really? And he goes, yeah. Yep, run the balance bar with some more rear brake in it. But you know what? Just put that bigger rotor. It's going to be fine. Well, come to find out, what was happening is the back of that car doesn't have the cooling efficiency as the front.
So he's getting hot. It was getting hot.
And then they were fading.
Yeah.
See, I wasn't thinking that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that either, especially coming at that point in the track, coming into turn one. I mean, you're coming off of a long front straight. I would have thought that the brakes would have cooled down at least somewhat with that straightaway before going into the corner. I wouldn't.
And see, I didn't think about it. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to send you the big 14-inch, 1.25-inch stuff.
Yeah.
So we moved the caliper around on the bracket, put that big stuff on the back. I can tell when Chris is happy because he doesn't call me.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing about customers. Like, I know my customers, when they're happy, they're not calling me. So I typically have to reach out to them.
Yeah.
But he goes, Mike, the car's, I don't want to ever say it's going to be perfect, but it's pretty damn close. And I said, okay, well, I learned a lot from that. Right. Before we came on, we were talking about Andy McKee. And Andy is an engineer I think he works for aerospace. He's very, very smart man, very smart. And he and his wife are both very good drivers.
Yeah.
Teresa, like, it's kind of amazing when you see the two of them together, because you talk about how two people are on such the same wavelength because they've been doing it for so long together. Like, I don't even think they get out of the car now, because she'll run the car in XP as well.
Yeah.
She gets out of the car and she doesn't even say anything, and he knows what to do just from watching her. So he emailed me over the weekend and he said, "Hey, I want to get bigger calipers on the back of the car for this season." And I picked this caliper out. Well, I looked at what was on the car, and we went from 4.12 square inch calipers.
Yep.
He wanted to go to 4.8.
Yeah.
So there's two different ways that Willwood can handle this. We can just take the order and send him what he wants.
Yep.
Or ask, "Hey, well, why?" Well, what he told me made total sense. He put a bigger tire on the back of the car.
Yep.
So the circumference and the width got larger. So now he already knows, because I'm sure he ran the numbers on it as well. He probably stayed up on New Year's Eve, like just running numbers on this, but realized, hey, I need to replace those calipers anyway. And now that I've got to have more coefficient of friction on the ground, I might as well throw some more rear brake in this thing.
I mean, if you got the tire to handle it.
Right?
Yeah.
So, those are the things that I'm constantly, it's not always the people at Willwood that are telling the customer you should do this. It's more of asking the right questions, or the customer, you just know that they know, and asking them, "Hey, well, why do you want to do this?" "Oh, I want to do it because of these reasons." And you go, "Wow. Okay."
Makes sense.
You learn a lot.
Yeah.
You learn a lot.
Having that mind that's always open to learning the new things, and being open to listen, because that it'll key you into a lot of things.
Oh man, if you're not open-minded, God, it's got to be just like suspension companies. The thing that I always preach is, I don't care how fast your car goes. I just don't care.
Yeah.
And it's become kind of a joke, especially with my right-hand man, Caleb, because he's a motor, quote unquote, motor engine guy, right?
Yeah.
He used to work for MMR. It's all about horsepower and drag cars. It's all about going fast. I could care less. All I want to do is I want to tires, brakes, suspension. That's, if I can work those together.
Yeah.
And then make it so that car, the customer says it's not going fast enough, I've done my job, right? Yeah. So I think that's another thing that a lot of guys that get into, I know it happened to me, when they start to autocross, I tell them, you are going to suck for like 2 years.
Yeah.
You're going to suck. And you're going to be so pissed off because you're going to go so slow.
Yeah.
But you're going to need to, it's almost like, this is a terrible example. It's almost like an alcoholic. Like, he's got to hit rock bottom to figure it out. I know it sounds bad. All right. But flat out, like, that junkie has got to hit rock bottom to go, okay, I'm going to listen now.
Yeah.
Right? And I find that if they stick with it, I want to get into this, and I go, okay, you're going to have a long road ahead of you. Perfect example. You probably don't know this name, Brian Crofts. He's the Ultra 4, so like King of the Hammers.
Yep.
He's the King of the Hammers national points champ. Kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, he's the overall champ. He got the most points for one season in Ultra 4. Okay. And about 3 years ago, he said, Mike, you know what? I want to build a C10 truck and I want to autocross it. And I went, oh, that's funny. And he's like,
That's a complete, total different way of running.
right? And I went, well, that's pretty funny. And he's like, what's so funny about it? And I go, Brian, dude, it's gonna be great to watch you suck for like a year. He's like, no, I think now his wife, fiance, is also of that lineage. It's Bailey Campbell. Her father is 3-time King of the Hammers champion, right?
Yeah.
She is a shoe, like a shoe. So now we're kind of building the car around his driving habits and her driving habits, and he's a medium-sized person and she's a small petite person. Like, how are we going to have the seat so it'll work for both of them, and the steering so it feels right for both of them? I mean, he's really building this truck properly, right? And I keep telling him, I'm like, dude, you're just going to suck. And I want you to stick into it, dude. Cause you have that drive, right? But it's not going to be fun. No, it's going to be great, man. I'm like, you don't have to hold on, man.
Yeah.
Cause you are not going to go out like you are in your Ultra 4 car and qualify on pole. It's not going to happen. And that's okay. But you're going to have to really like dig deep.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've learned is I see a lot of people, they get into it and then they get kind of discouraged because they're like, man, I can't go that fast. And I'm like, you're probably never going to go as fast as a lot of people ahead of you.
Yeah. Well, and that was a, a learning point for myself. I ran a few events. I was fast. I won a couple events. And then I go to LS Fest and I'm 30th. But a lot of the guys ahead of me have been racing as long as I've been alive.
Right.
And there's no replacement for seat time when it comes to any form of racing.
Yep.
But especially autocross. It's just seat time is seat time, and there's nothing that you can do. And if you are good in another form of racing, it will ease the transition, but it's still going to take some time.
Oh, absolutely.
So
and I think you just struck something that I need to tell Brian is it's gonna make it easier.
Yeah.
But it's still gonna break your heart, dude.
Yep.
Now kind of talking about Mike at Willwood, for quite a few years I campaigned the Willwood Mustang.
Yeah.
And I ran it in a lot of Optima USCA events. Our local autocross that we sponsored, I was out there once a month, run the car. And I really feel like my driving over the last 8 to 9 years, just driving down the highway, especially driving our truck and trailer, I feel my driving is so much better because I autocrossed.
Yeah.
But here's my problem. And this is Mike at Willwood problem. So now I go to events and people say, well, where's the Mustang? Why aren't you running the Mustang? And I go, like a junkie, I go, I had to give it up.
Yeah.
But here's why. I really came to the fact that I'm concentrating on making people like Joshua go faster.
Yep.
And Smitty go faster. And Brian Crofts, once he gets out there, concentrating on these people doing better, right? That by the time I go back and I sit in the car, I can't even remember the course.
Yeah.
So it started to really bother me, like especially when we were autocrossing, because it was pretty much the only thing we could do during COVID, right?
Yeah.
It's like every month I was looking forward to it because I could go into work, pack up the car, go out there, stay 6 feet apart from everybody, and autocross, right? Yeah. But I realized I'm going, you know what? I'm not putting in the work that I need to put, and it's because I'm putting in the work because I'm here to work, right? Yeah. So now I've gotten to where I'm like, you know what? And I tell a lot of people this, like Tom and Valerie.
Yeah, Tom and Val are awesome.
Tell me about it, right?
Yep.
And I think after Scottsdale this year, they finally realized, they go, I have more fun now just trying, coming over and watching you guys run.
Yep.
And then going over to Mark and saying, hey, Mark, you know, you're not as fast as this guy and this other third gen over here, this 14. And then him going, whoa. It's like
Mark,
I'm having
Mark
more.
is the most quiet, unassuming person, but he is also one of the most competitive people I've ever met.
Right.
I love
So it's like I'm getting
God, I love
more.
him.
I'm getting more out of that. And then watching Mark run and saying, hey, you know what? When that black car goes back over to Tom's next season, let's do this. Right? Oh, Tom is watching.
Yeah. Only Val is
So-
awesome.
So there's so many people like that, you know, I get such a kick out of watching them advance and do so well.
Yeah.
That now I've just gotten to where I'm like, you know what? Even if I brought the Mustang out, I just don't feel like I'm going to be having as much fun as I should be, you know? And that's I'm okay with it. I wasn't okay with it for a while.
Yeah.
I'm okay with it now.
Now, yeah, Tom says I'm in trouble. It's par for the course.
And which one's in trouble, me or you?
I don't know. It could be both. I'm going to assume myself because that just seems to be the way things go sometimes.
Well, let's see what Tom has to say about that.
Yeah, no kidding. Mike, you're the one in trouble.
I don't see it.
Boom. There we go.
No, that means not you, Mike Hamrick. Come on, Tom. Come on, get it square, buddy.
Oh man. Well, Mike, it's been a blast having you on tonight. This is one of our longer running episodes, but the viewership has stayed consistent through the entire thing. So, big shout out and thank you for coming on and talking brakes with us and just kind of hearing your story and your path to getting into the industry, man. It's been now we're both in trouble.
Oh, great.
Man. It's all good. It's all good. I'll buy the drinks at the next race. But it's been a blast talking to you, man. And if you can get it on the calendar, dude, come up to UMI. It's a great time. It's a blast. And it'd be cool for you to see a large number of cars up there running Willwood stuff that you've probably had a conversation with them before and getting their stuff on there. So,
oh yeah. I mean, people like Ramey have told me for years, he's like, Mike, you just got to come out. And I'm like, it always lands on the wrong weekends, but I need to do it. It's on the bucket list.
Yeah, definitely, man. Definitely. But again, thank you for coming on, brother. I appreciate everything. And for those of you out in Facebook land watching, give us a shout. We'll get you set up with anything you need from Willwood. And big shout out again. Thank you to Redline for their support to us. And you guys at Willwood, thank you for your support. And
hey, you got it.
With what we're trying to do here with the race team and everything. So,
and hey, thank you for always asking first about how my boy's doing. I appreciate that.
You know, I love to hear it, man. When I first met you, I think I met you via email from Tom Pichette, put us in contact with each other. And we had a phone conversation, and, you know, you got to tell me about him coming into the Army and everything. And I've never met your boy, but I have heard everything about him, and you have told me about his career path up to now. And it's just awesome to hear somebody that's got the motivation, the excitement in the Army, and he's doing very, very good with it. And he's very successful with it. So, man, it's, you should be definitely proud, man. You raised a good boy just here, you know, being successful the way he is, man. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, take it easy, Mike.
Okay, man. Have a good rest of the week.